Currently, ARP has kind of a liberal bend. 60 Plus is an alternative organization that has a very conservative bend, which I am. So they wanted to come and give me an award tomorrow, and I said, that's great. And they called 3 days ago and said, no, our bus tour going around the United States needs to come to Buffalo today at 12:30. So at 12:30, we had a lot of old folks like me in there for lunch, and they gave me an award, and I was looking at my watch saying, oh my God, how am I going to get down here at 1:15? What am I going to do for lunch? Here's a McDonald's, I can zip through the path to the drive-thru. But what I'd like to do is kind of keep this more, not so much presentation, but I could talk forever, by the way. I used to say, do you want a 30-second speech? Do you want a 5-minute speech, a 2-hour speech? I can do any of those things. But really, from your backgrounds, and I'm assuming most of you are private sector people, is that true? Is anyone public sector? You are. Okay, we believe. Well, I spent my life in the private sector, starting, as we said, in 1972 with an engineering degree from NC State. But what I'd like to do is talk about issues that you might have in your companies, and I'll certainly share with you experiences, and I could go on and on. But a little bit about the background I do have. I got an engineering degree, but really had gone to work at age 16 selling shoes. One of the second oldest of 7 kids, and our family didn't have any money. And I was then living in the Carolinas, up in the mountains of Hendersonville, a lot of moonshine. That's what we did in our spare time at 16. But I started selling shoes on commission so I could have a little bit of spending money. And I did pretty well at it because it was commission-based. So, okay, heck with minimum wage, I'd go in there and rock and roll. So I continued that in college and paid my way through North Carolina State, getting an engineering degree, and then was at a quandary. What am I going to do with my engineering degree? When Westinghouse threw something at me I had never considered, sales engineering. You had to be an engineer to sell their complex distribution equipment, whether it's substations or transformers or electric motors, and their whole huge catalog of products, because you met with and talked to and sold to engineers. And you had to understand the product. General Electric said, no, we want you to be an engineer, pocket protector and all of that. And I weighed those two options and opted to go into the sales role because I had enjoyed selling for 6 years. It was actually a very good decision I made because I was then moved to Birmingham to sell the electrical products throughout the northern half of Alabama into Tennessee, Georgia, and Mississippi. So I spent a lot of my time driving around in the car, calling on the copper mills, the aluminum plants, the steel mills, certainly U.S. Steel in Birmingham, the coal mining operation, all the paper mills, International Paper, Kimberly-Clark, Gulf States Paper, selling them our stuff. Well, it was actually a great experience because typically you sell big stuff to the higher echelons of what they're putting in major expansion, you're meeting with general managers and so forth, and it was a great experience. So being a typical sales guy, knocking off at 3 in the afternoon, that's what salespeople do. I said, I'd go back and get an MBA. It's actually UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham. So I did that, and at the end of that, I said, you know, I'm doing real well, which I did, but that's not what I could see myself doing my whole life. Driving 3.5 hours from Birmingham up to the Tennessee border, spending an hour with a receptionist, getting to see 2 engineers, and then getting back in my car to go, well, there was an 8-hour day, 2 30-minute meetings. You know, it was necessary, but I won't say it's something I did my whole life. So they said, all right, if you want to climb the ladder, then you've got to go see what it's like to make something. You've got to go to a factory. Different pace, you find out what it's like, and why sometimes things don't ship on time, and so forth. So I said, great, where do you want me to go? And they said, we can go to Pittsburgh or Buffalo. We've got lots of plants and divisions in Pittsburgh, and we've got 6 or 8 divisions in Buffalo. And I'm assuming, are most of you Buffalonian folks? So you know the 2.5 million square foot plant at the airport that's now the parking lot. That's where I work. So I came here in 1976, and using my degree was in market planning and as a marketing analyst. And one of the first things I did was introduce the first high-efficiency electric motor in the United States. It was 1970. We started to worry about energy and efficiency, and there's an easy way to make the motor more efficient. You just put more copper. Cost more, so you got to sell it more. So how do you brand it? How do you package it? It was very successful. And went around the country presenting our high efficiency electric motors, which are taken for granted today. But you went and Googled it, and unlike Al Gore, who would say he invented the internet, I actually did introduce the efficiency motor in this country in 77. So I moved up within their ranks and ended up running their gear division. Gears, big gearboxes, some of them half the size of this room, power plants, paper mills, sewage treatment plants and the like, and it was a stepchild operation. It's mechanical products, gears, as opposed to everything else they had, which was electric. But they were all driven by motors. That was the electric motors. And amongst other things, we did all of the subway transmissions for the NFTA in New York City and Washington. So that was what I did. I was made general manager when I was 29 years old by Westinghouse standards, and I was doing well. And got a call in 1982 after running that division for 3 years. They said, we're closing the Buffalo operation. 14,000 people here, 2.5 million square foot plant. Each manufacturing job creates, as we know, 6 other jobs. So this community lost 84,000 jobs in Westinghouse. But they said, your operation doesn't fit a lot of the other electrical things. So if you'd like to buy that business, we would cooperate. We want money, but we'll price it fairly. And we don't want it just to because a lot of customers would be pretty ticked off if they couldn't continue to get replacement parts. So I was able to put together an LBO, leverage buyout, in late 1982 before that term even. What it really meant is I had no money and leveraged everything back when we could actually do things like that, and was able to create a new company, Not All Gear, and that was the Westinghouse Gear. Moved it to the Bell plant, which was vacant up in Niagara Falls, and it's still there. So it was 30 years ago, still there, employs about 100. I sold it in 1997, but I didn't sell the pig in the poke. After I sold the company and stayed on for a little bit, I decided that wasn't where I needed to be. Like, I sold it to Dana, and I get those phone calls and they'd say, fly down to Pittsburgh and meet with us. And I said, no, I'm playing golf tomorrow. They weren't used to that answer. Then they said, okay, you're doing a great job, you're a great guy. We want to move you to Boston. We want you to run this entire division of the group of Danaher. I said, I'm not leaving Buffalo. Why would I want to leave Buffalo? They said, well, if you're going to stay in Buffalo, you can't continue to report to the president. You're too small. And I said, okay, that's fine. And 2 months later, I left. So then I became a serial entrepreneur. I was kind of a quasi-entrepreneur. So over the last 10 years, I became the grim reaper of dead businesses. So if your business was distressed, bankrupt, had already shut down, I would get the phone call, can you do something to help us, to resurrect us or something? And so over the last 10 years, I've done that 22 times, 22 bankrupt or significantly financially stressed. And have put them together. Some are standalone, but many of them are now rolled into 5 or 6 or 7 different platform companies. And we have about 600 employees here in Western New York. And we do have a plant in Detroit, one in Boston, and one in New Zealand. So between them, about 650 or 60 employees. So what I have and what we could discuss here is I step into companies that have failed, that have no idea what they're doing. Reason I bought them is because they didn't cost. I'd have to put a little money in, but there was something when somebody would say, what's the commonality between a biotech company and a kitchen cabinet business in Buffalo, China, and equipment rental? I'd say I didn't pay anything for it, but blood, sweat, and tears, equity went in. So, which is a long way of bringing me into the efficiency of Lean Six Sigma work. It didn't start in my context as Lean Six Sigma. It started as continuous improvement and quality management. And those were the buzzwords that I had at Westinghouse. All right, what efficiencies are we going to bring in? How are we going to re-engineer a particular process? What are our ideas? And it was always top down. It was never bottom up. Sure, we'd say, here's the suggestion box. You know, we give prizes to people who would put a suggestion in the box. They did some trinket of some sort. They'd have a lunch for everybody that put a suggestion in the box. At that point, management opened the box. And management looked at the ideas. And then management decided which of those ideas they would implement. And then they did that. And we used to call it the flavor of the month. Because they'd grab an idea, they'd run with it a little bit, they'd put it in the employee newsletter, they'd all feel good about it, and within 30 days it was gone. 4 or 5 months later, you do another one of these programs. And I'm sure some of you have lived through that. The flavor of the month, feel good. If you're a big corporation, you can report up the ranks. Here's what we're doing. Here's the efficiency program we're driving this month. That was my introduction to it at Westinghouse. Didn't work real well. In fact, didn't work. When I formed Not All Gear, that was a whole different ballgame. I was on my own. 3 partners. We had a company we could physically move, start over again, hire all new employees, set up a nationwide distribution and sales rep network, keep customers that were used to the security of Westinghouse Electric. And that's why I didn't name it Collins Gear. That would have scared a lot of folks. I researched, I found that Westinghouse got in that business in the 1800s by buying R.D. Nuttall Company. I said, all right, I'm going to resurrect that name. It's a well-known name within the gear industry. Then I took a picture of the bell plant, which is about 1.5 million square feet, put it on the brochure and insinuated that that was our new factory. 5 million square feet. Now, we had 120,000 square feet, which was not small. It wasn't. And people would come up, as I would call them, and say, well, Nuttall, I kind of remember that Nuttall name from the 40s and 50s. Wow, you were able to hook back up with them. I mean, that's just great. And I never would say, no, it's a brand new startup company with 2 cents in the bank, if that. And after about a year and a half, people started to dawn on them that, in fact, it was Collins Gear. But by then, we had shipped them products. We were on the way. They actually saw probably improved quality of service, so it didn't matter. But that was that history. So when we got into that business, we had to do things efficiently. We had to do things different. And since we moved everything, we were able to pretty much start over. I didn't have all the tools that perhaps I really needed. We entered into what's now known as total quality management, TQM. And TQM worked, but it was all quality driven. I'd say very subjective. We didn't have a lot of metrics around. I have a big poster, 2 posters in my office. One says, in God we trust, all of us bring data. The other one says, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. So we felt good about what we were doing. We kind of sort of thought we were doing it better, and we were doing it more efficiently, and I'm sure we were, but there weren't metrics around it. And I'd say a lot of things, all the enthusiasm of starting a new project fades. If you're not careful, in 6 months, you're right back where you started. All the energy's gone. That's when, well, after I sold the company to Danaher, Danaher is pretty well known as one of the most efficient companies in the United States, certainly one of the fastest growing, one of the most successful. And Mitch and Steve Rail, who owned Danaher, had something called Danaher Business System. It was Lean Six Sigma. So, as the newest acquisition, they plugged me into all of their training, and it was really Toyota. It was the Toyota Lean model. They just renamed it instead of the Toyota model. But included Six Sigma, not unlike what General Electric did. They took the Lean model out of Toyota. They took the Six Sigma metrics out of Motorola, brought it together. Everyone now knows it as Lean Six Sigma. But it really was giving metrics to doing things smarter and better, but doing it in such a direct way of re-engineering processes that it worked, but it was the metrics that we used to measure, but more importantly, at the end, the control charts that we put in. If you walk into a company that really believes in Six Sigma, you're going to see control charts everywhere that monitor daily, weekly, monthly what's going on. And if they're doing it for just a flash of it, you'll go up to one of the charts and see it's a year old, which means they're not living the real life. They're just putting the pictures up. If you go up to one and it's a day old or a week old, then you can trust that they're actually measuring what they're doing. And there, everything's visual management, everything's color-coded, red and green and yellow. A good Lean Six Sigma operation, good efficient operation. You could do a self-guided tour. Every department is marked. There's name tags outside of the offices. The standard operating procedures are right there on the shelf. You'll typically see the shadow boards, the tools, and you can look and say, all right, this tool's missing. Danaher took it to an extreme. They would make people in the office shadow board their desk. And you would have to put something around your telephone and your coffee cup coaster. And honest to God, they would say, if your telephone is outside of the area, or if your coffee cup is, then, you know, you're not doing what you're supposed to. But they took it to 110%. It was bizarre. But they were trying to drive this to a very large organization, making it a point. They made us a nut off. They fought me on this, but at some point they owned the business. I had to repaint every machine bright white. Any reason why?
See the dirt.
So you can see any oil poisoning. If a machine is leaking oil, and the machine is gray, which a lot of them are, or that military green, which is the traditional machine color, you don't really see the dripping of the oil and the like on the machine. Well, they're all about efficiency, which also takes you back to machines have to be maintained. You better have at every single machine a documented maintenance chart, and somebody's got to do it, and a manager can come up and look at that chart and verify that, in point of fact, this was done on a certain day and the filters were changed and so forth. But it came down to, if every machine is always running perfectly, you're never going to leak oil. It's almost like you'd have this group of folks waiting to see a drip of oil and go repair them. Our machines were 40 and 50 years old. These were machines built in the 1950s and 1960s. And here it was in 1983, no, now it was 1997. I said, guys, you're going to give me $10 million to go fix every machine and bring it up to snuff? Well, I went back in after I sold the business, about a year and a half or two later, and all the machines were painted green. This was one where they recognized they had gone too far. So when I came out of the Danaher background, the Westinghouse, TQM, and continuous improvement, what I tried to do was bring Lean Six Sigma in a common sense way, which means I don't paint my machines white, and I don't really care where your telephone is on your desk. But we're going to maintain our machines, we're going to have manuals, and we're going to have control charts, and we're going to measure what we do, and we're going to track what we do, and we're going to do all the 5S'ing, the scrubbing, and the cleaning, and the sorting, and the organizing, because in fact, it does work, but not to that extreme end. If you're a small company, you don't have to go to that extreme end. So I started to bring that philosophy in as I acquired or stepped into other companies. The typical company that's gone out of business, a couple of things have happened. They're on their way. They stop spending money on maintenance because they don't have any money. They stop paying their vendors on time. So the vendors start sending in second-class goods because you've got the good stuff, you send it to the guy that pays you on time. If you got the stuff that maybe didn't quite pass, you send that to the guy you know is going to pay you in 90 days. So kind of you get in this death spiral. But by stepping in and kind of wiping the slate clean, in each case, bringing some level of discipline, metrics, measuring, but probably the most important thing we did, lead into what we did in Erie County, was the vision. Why do we go to work every day? What's the vision of the company? And what are our core values? And there's a problem, because everyone's core values would be, I'm honest, I always do things right, I never cut corners, we treat our employees with respect, we're constantly measuring what we do with our customers, and you know, that looks nice on a wall, and by and large, not it looks nice on the wall. So you've got to come down to core values that you really can hold yourself accountable. And you've got to get buy-in by walking the walk, but you need a vision. Why are we coming to work today? Sure, make money, but beyond that, what is the message to our customer, and how do we grow the company? You don't shrink to success, you die. New York State, you grow or you die. So that was kind of a philosophy that I brought in, you know, having worked at Westinghouse, having run my own business, having sold it to Danaher, and then stepping into some of these companies. And it works. The vision piece works. You've got to take a half a step back as you bring efficiency in and train people on the process map, whatever it is you're doing. But then you got to walk the walk, because everyone steps back and says, flavor of the month, it'll be gone in 60 days. In 60 days when it's not gone, the president of the company is walking up to the machine and checking the maintenance chart, or looking at the metrics, whether it's sales metrics or quality metrics or days of receivables or inventory turns. People finally get it. They're going to have to do what you said you were going to do. And if you can do that and you get it ingrained inside the organization, that's success. Because I've said many times, back to Lean Six Sigma, it's not a fix-all. It's not a half a step, 2 steps back before you can take 3 steps forward. And it's a journey. It's a lifetime journey that never. Continuous improvement, you can always do something better. Things always change. New technology always comes out. You change your people. Toughest thing is you train all your folks, and 6 months later, 3 of them leave. Well, with the new 3 people coming in, they don't have that same training. So what happens? If they're not trained right, and you're just trained by looking around and watching what other folks do, chances are your things are slipping through the cracks. It takes a level of discipline. It costs money. It takes time. But if it's not driven by the CEO of the organization, it will fail. If the president says, okay, my head of QC is my Lean Six Sigma director, it's going to fail because that Lean Six Sigma guy has other things to do, being QC. But sometimes there's the pressure of shipping it out the door. And, there's the financial impact if you got to hold something back or rework it. If it's not driven or not 100% endorsed by the CEO or the president of the company, it will fail. It or certainly will not go. And that's a message I send to anyone that's thinking about entering into Lean Six Sigma. It's not a fix-all. It's not a silver bullet. It's not down and dirty and quick. And if you're not committed to it for the rest of your organization's existence, don't waste your time. Don't frustrate your employees. Don't even pretend to go down the road. And if the CEO of the company is not driving it, again, don't waste your time because it costs money and there's 2 steps back. And then people get frustrated. You're behind on the shop floor and you're taking 10 people off the shop floor and putting them into a training room. And the production guy is screaming bloody murder. I need those 10 people back on the shop floor. If the president of the company is not behind it, those 10 people are going to be back on the shop. That's just my warning about it. But it does work. I've proven it works again and again and again and again. And people know with me, it's not a flavor of the month. It's not going away. I check the control charts. I look at the metrics. Hence, if you're going to work for me or one of my companies, you're going to endorse it or you're going to be one frustrated person because you're going to get chastised again and again because you're not doing what you're supposed to. But once you bring it into an organization, and my example too about top down, Six Sigma is bottom up. And that's what also makes it tough. Every worker doesn't understand it and endorse it. It's not going to work. But once they do, it's contagious. And I've laughed with my wife. She knows how I am on efficiency. She says, but stay out of my closet. You will not organize my closet or my shoes or my belts or my purses. And I've said that's okay. My 21-year-old daughter, who's a senior PC, I haven't been in my wife's closet in 12 years. And I was tempted to go up there once this summer just to see. My 21-year-old daughter said, no, Dad. I was just up there. My wife and my daughter are the same size. I was looking for something to wear to go to Encore or whatever bar she was going. She says, you do not want to go to Mom's closet? You probably jump off the roof of the house or you yell and you scream. Stay out of Mom's closet. My wife can apparently find her thing. But efficiency takes you everywhere you go. I mean, how many people have gone in the buffet line? And the maple syrup is before the pancakes. Where you get to the end of the line, and there's the coffee, and the sugar, and the cream, and everything's bottled up, and everyone's backed up. You say to yourself, take the coffee and move it to the other corner. Not everybody wants coffee. Split it into black coffee and coffee with cream and sugar. And all of a sudden, all of the bottlenecks are gone, and everything's efficient. Put the maple syrup after the pancake. It will haunt you. If you really get into this, it haunts you when you go to the bank. It haunts you at Kmart or at Tops where the lines are going out the door. But it does work. But it takes discipline. And if somebody said, I'm the production manager, I'm going to bring it in, yeah, it could hurt to bring in some level of efficiency in Six Sigma, 5S'ing your workspace, and sorting and cleaning and scrubbing and shadow boards and all that. But if an organization is going to do it, it's got to be driven by the CEO. He's got to be convinced. It is the future of the company, and it's a lifetime journey, and you've got to spend money, take 2 steps back to get where you're going. But what I found, when I came into Erie County, there was probably nothing more dysfunctional than the county of Erie. It was bankrupt. New York State, not known for fiscal discipline, New York State imposed a hard control board to run the finances of Erie County. That's pretty darn sad. When New York State says your elected officials are so incompetent, we're going to take over your finances, which they did. We weren't paying our bills. I think a lot of you remember back, I tell this story outside of Buffalo and they can't believe it, but when they had to get the public to donate toilet paper because they ran out, and the companies would not sell toilet paper because they were asking the public for donation. I mean, that's where we were. You know, we had dozens of bridges shut down. They closed the beaches for 2 years. They shut down the county forest. This place was pretty darn bad in 2007. We had the red-green budget with that. So when I stepped up and said, you know what, I may be a Republican, and this county may be 2-1 Democrat, but I think it's time we elect the chief executive, not a chief politician. That was my message. And the county was just bankrupt enough that they heard that message, and they said, I don't care what party you're in, if you think you can fix it, we may just hire you to do it. But how are you going to do something that everyone promises, all politicians promise the world? They do. And then they don't deliver. So the public's cynical, frustrated, angry, all of those things, and rightfully so, because I'm one of them as well. They said, what are you going to do different? He said, I'm going to bring Lean Six Sigma into a municipal county government for the first time in the United States. They go, huh? What'd you say? But in the room, somebody from NY27. In the room, somebody from Columbia. There's somebody in the room from Moe. There's somebody in the room from one of the Carlton Technology. Private company that has been implementing Lean Six Sigma for a lot of years. They've been doing it to different degrees of success. But a lot of the voters were there, and they understood what I was saying. Maybe skeptical about bringing it into the government, but for others, I just said, Google it. What are you going to find? You can find Motorola, GE, Toyota, Danaher, and you're going to see how many of them on the front page of their annual report talk about their recent success. It works in the private sector. People go, but that's widgets. We're not making widgets in the county. I go, no, but it works in insurance companies. It works at Collider. It works in the hospital. It's process. Everything is a process. The way we drive to work, the way we get dressed in the morning, the way we put where our cereal is. Everything in life is a process. Every process can be process mapped, and every process can be improved. Just depends on what level you want to take it. So with that, I said, all right, I know it takes full-time, so I appointed a full-time director of Lean Six Sigma. His name was Al Hammonds. I didn't ask him what party he was in. Turns out he's a Democrat. That's fine with me. He was a master black belt in Lean Six Sigma. Al was. He worked at Delphi in Six Sigma in engineering, and he's gone to UB, at the TCIE, the Center for Industrial Effectiveness. He was a teacher of Six Sigma, and I had hired him at one of my companies up in North Tonawanda, at OGSI, Oxygen Generating Systems, company that makes hospital oxygen supplies. And I saw how good he was, so when I was elected, I said, come on, Al, how about coming into government? He found that intriguing. He likes to be first. I'd say he's actually parlayed that into a nice little career today. But he came in, and we announced what we were doing to the troops. It wasn't subject to debate, and we were going to introduce it, and we hired UV through the TCIE to do Six Sigma training. And I did something, again, that's never been done before. They said the culture of a municipal government is not exactly embracing change. That's the understanding. So in the managers, within the county, there's only 200 non-union people in the entire county of Erie. There's 5,000 employees. Only 200 were not unionized. So all the first-line supervisors were in the union. Second-line supervisors were in the union. The managers were in the union. Everything's unionized right up until you get to the commissioner or director. And I had 25 commissioners, and under the commissioners, maybe 50 deputy directors. That was it. And the county attorneys aren't unionized. I mean, that was it. So I said, we got to change the culture of the organization. We need them to embrace change, not fight. We need to show them where it makes their job easier, not harder. And the frustrations of not serving clients, whether it's food stamps or social services, they can go home with less stress because they're better serving the client. I call that culture change. Well, that's a whole other thing beyond Lean Six Sigma. So we hired Canisius to run a parallel culture change program. And I appointed a director of culture. Now that meant director of Lean Six Sigma, director of culture change, had nothing else to do. Nag people, I call them the chief nags, because everyone else had stuff to do, and they'd always have an excuse why they didn't get this done. And sure enough, if it was something due in 2 weeks, people procrastinate, 12 hours before the 2 weeks are up. Now they're scurrying around to get it done, but I had somebody nagging. And we took people out of their workplace and we sent them to training classes. We had people come into the county. We had a lot of meetings at the library. We bring in folks. And it was, let's start. Let's make sure we have some early wins, that we don't fall on the face. So we took the 4 or 5 easiest projects. We already knew where we were going to go with it. They became our first 4 or 5 Lean Six Sigma projects. We knew with 100% assurance we were going to see. We had a good idea of what it might look like at the end. And therefore, people would start to see investments, because Lean Six Sigma is also not free. A lot of times it's investing in technology, software, computer, reorganizing departments, sometimes buying additional machinery, because you start to say, how do we make it more efficient? Well, I need this and I need that. I need the tools. It's not just rearranging the buffet table of Perkins. And we had to be committed to it, and we did. And all of a sudden, the folks that took part in Lean Six Sigma program, they got some new computers, and they got some software, and their offices got cleaned up, and sometimes they got new chairs. And all of a sudden, too, they were better able to deliver to their clients. The clients, because the county exists by the Constitution of New York State, to deliver the social service safety net to those in need. That's what we do. Stamps or HEAP or Central Police Services, in working with probation or a lot of those kind of areas. Well, they were frustrated. We had cases where people had 3 computers on the desk because the software didn't talk to each other. They put it in here and get to a certain point, and then they go to a second. Honest to God, on this desktop, 3 computers. They put data in and transferring it. Well, when you replace 3 computers with 1, and you got to only input the data once, these folks are going home a lot happier than they were going home before. So yeah, it's a lifetime journey. When I was unelected, as I call it, we were 4 years in. We did them in waves. At the end of 4 years, I had 12 black belts, 3 master black belts. I had about 40 green belts. No, I had more than 40. I had 60 or 80 green belts, and I had 200 or 300 yellow belts, because each one's a different level of training. The yellow belt, you get 6 or 8 hours of training, and the green belts are off-site for 4 or 5 days, and obviously the black are into it for well over a year, and they run a project. It's a very formal process. But every black belt can then supervise 3 or 4 projects during the year, and the average return for each black belt was over $250,000 a year. And it wasn't like we didn't have a lot of projects. We were rocking and rolling. That's how we cut 22% of the county workforce. There's 1,200 workers. Now, I don't want anyone to lose their job, but I serve the taxpayer. I'll tell you, my 6 vision and core values. And on every email that went out from any county employee while I was county executive, at the bottom of the email, after you saw their name, it was the county vision statement. Erie County will be a world-class community where people want to live, businesses want to locate, tourists want to do. World-class, want. So what do we do to make that vision a reality? It's pretty easy. It's straightforward. It's not complicated. I don't know anyone who wouldn't want to be a world-class community where people, businesses want to locate, tourists want. So with that vision, it went out on every email. So people just saw it all the time. But also as we communicated with the outside world, I'll tell you right now, we were the only county in the United States that had a vision statement. Then we went to the core values. Well, I had 6 core values. We believe in smaller government. We believe in personal accountability. We believe in local decision making. We believe in fiscal discipline. We serve the taxpayer, and we respect future generations. All right, so now there's tough decisions to be made. What do we do? Does it fit the vision? And what do we do that is it in context of our 6 core values? So that's how I brought that into Erie County. And at the end, when we cut 1,200 employees, about half were retirements and attrition. We had people who just said, I'm old enough to retire, I don't like this nonsense, I don't want any part of it, they retired. I sure got a lot of heat for the 600 pink slips that went out, but I served the taxpayer with fiscal discipline to keep taxes stable. Hence, I'd make those tough decisions. I'd sleep well at night and I'd say, I'm sorry, but just like a lot of others, whether it's more training or reinventing yourself, that's life. And we all know rule number one, life's not what you think it is. Remember rule number two is. But I took my job seriously. Well, those 1,200 cuts saved the county $72 million a year. That's not small change in one county in New York State, $72 million. So what were the results after 4 years of Lean Six Sigma? Control board gone after 18 months. Every road, every bridge, all the parks, all the beaches reopened. We reduced the county debt by $120 million. We created a $100 million cash surplus. And we were so flush with cash, we started spending cash on our capital projects. Cash to rebuild this convention center. Cash for the new building that's going to be going into ECC. For the new nursing home at ECMC. Rebuild East Evans Center Road, that was $8 million cash. So that also helped us not. That's why our debt was dropping. Had I been reelected, we would have cut the debt another $100 million over the next 4 years. No increase in property tax. But yep, I took money away from me. I privatized the WIC program. I privatized the county clinics. Go back to vision and value. Vision and value. When I would say, we're going to put $8 million in the convention center. Well, why are we doing that? Because our vision says we want to make this a place where tourists want to live. Well, you're not going to get the convention to tourists if this place was as down and dirty as it was. If you're going to serve the taxpayers, and when conventions come in, they spend money, so it's actually a plus. They would actually say, the money we put in here would return itself year after year. So it was an easy decision to make, but at the same time we were making other cuts, people were confused. How do you cut here and put money in there? How it is you're not funding Shakespeare in the Park and theater of youth and some other things, but you're putting more money into some of the big six, Albright Knox, Birchfield Penny, Darwin Martin House. And I said, because the tourists come to visit them. The others are churning in our community. And there's a place for the people who support something to step up, and then there's a place for the tax. Some of the things that were the toughest decisions I made like this. Because I just looked to the vision. I looked to the 6 core values. I was warned many times, if you do this, it's going to be used against you when you run for re-election. I said, I'm not running to get re-elected. Yeah, I'd like to get re-elected, but I don't deviate, not ever. Sure enough, you saw the commercial with the libraries, the arts, and something like that. I got unelected. But we fixed Erie County, and Lean Six Sigma was what we brought in culture change to get it done. And now others are doing it. I like to think I'm the Pied Piper of Lean Six Sigma across government. Amherst is doing it, Clarence is doing it. Now some of them have started in a smaller way, because a town is very different. You know, they brought it into the highway department or the parks department, and that's okay. You know, and as that succeeds, and they've all typically gone to UB for some of the training. I don't think any of them have done the culture training, but they have different budgets. I have a $2 billion budget, so I could designate and prioritize them. But other counties across the country have been using it. I was working with Seattle, Washington. I was working with the government in Australia who saw what we were doing. So we did some things that took notice. Now, we all know my successor terminated the program, which was a shame. But he's got 400 trained practitioners of Lean Six Sigma in the county. They don't just forget what they have. They will keep it going. We had enough inertia behind Lean Six Sigma that even though my successor formally terminated the program, people don't have a brain drain, forget about efficiency or how it works. But, and it did. So, in government it works, in the private sector it works, but you need to be committed. You need a vision. Everyone should have a vision, even a life vision for yourself that have core values. I articulated a vision for the United States. But the United States of America will reclaim its past glory as the land of opportunity, providing a bright future for our children and grandchildren. That's it. It's not an R, it's not a D, It's a vision of where this country needs to go, because I use the word reclaim, because we aren't the land of opportunity. And we've disadvantaged our children and grandchildren. So if you articulate that vision, which I intend to do in Congress, post it outside my office, and then before we get into a debate on any particular thing, you start by reading the vision statement. You read the vision statement and say, all right, now let's debate this issue and see how it fits. And us reclaiming our past glory as the land of opportunity, providing a bright future for our children and grandchildren. And how about core values? They aren't any different. Smaller government, personal accountability, local decision-making, serving taxpayers, respecting future generations, and fiscal discipline. Same 6 core values. They aren't any different. But my mission statement for Congress is, Congress shall, any of you are lawyers, you know the difference between shall and will. Congress shall govern in accordance with and abiding by the Constitution, period. That's it. Nothing more. So I'm going to go to Washington with a vision, a mission, and core values that are not exactly the norm, but they work. And they aren't R's and D's. Now then you can argue about how you get there. You know, how do we balance the budget? How do we become energy independent? How do we fix Social Security? How do we fix Medicare? What changes do we make? Well, you go back to core values, personal accountability, personal, and I'm not trying to be political here, but I'm talking common sense. You know, the 99 weeks of unemployment really do anything. They really don't. Personal responsibility, go get yourself a job. I know it's tough love, but get yourself retrained, go get a job, don't watch Oprah for 99 weeks. Now you'll never go back to work. It makes people feel good to say, but I'm going to take care of that person. Well, that flies in the face against a core value of personal accountability and personal responsibility that made this country what it is. Go ahead.
I had a question too. How come you never got around to fixing the DMV in the county? Because from an efficiency perspective, it's a train.
Did I pay you to ask that?
I just had to get a license renewal. It took 2.5 hours.
But here was the truth. I was elected county executive. There was 5 other.
What was the question?
Why wasn't the DMV in the county clerk's office running more efficient? Well, I was elected county executive, not sheriff, not comptroller, not county clerk, and so we had separately elected officials in those positions. And I respected someone separately elected. Kathy Hochul was the county clerk, and she refused to implement me. That was her right as a separately elected official. She did not want to.
The second question, you run for Congress, obviously, as a business executive, CEO, especially with a privately owned company, you have dominion over everything you do. So implementing policies like this is actually quite easy. In government, obviously, it's much harder because.
But I was the CEO of the county, so.
You were, and so you still had a fair amount of power in Congress, especially.
One of 435.
Yeah, I mean, Boehner's.
I've been asked this question.
Boehner's been involved, and I'm sure he doesn't really much care about fixing more efficiency. So how would we get that mandate through a government, which I think most people feel is dysfunctional?
Well, if I could cut Erie County government 22%, you could cut the state government 35%, and you could probably cut the federal government, because we'd already gone through red green budget.
If everybody followed with that vision.
And you're right. I understand the job I'm going to take, but somebody's got to stand up in the room. And I tell you, the big debate you're going to see going forward is how do we balance the budget?
Absolutely.
How do we get rid of $1 trillion a year of deficit? It's now made our debt equal to our GDP at $16 trillion. How do we get the economy growing?
And 10 years ago, 12 years ago, there was a surplus.
I know.
We squandered.
Right, you're right. So it comes to somebody's looking for, I always say, don't bring me a problem if you don't have a solution. Lean Six Sigma is a relatively painless solution to making things better and more efficient. And if you want it to be completely painless, which is typical of most government, you say, I'm just simply not going to fill any open positions. I'm going to implement, had I done that in Erie County, we would have cut 600 positions and no one would have gotten paid. But we were too far gone, so I had to issue things. But if you wanted to be benevolent, all you simply say is there's a hiring freeze. We will not hire a new employee for the next 10 years. And when Joe leaves, he doesn't get replaced. When Sally leaves, she doesn't get replaced. You do not replace an employee for the next 10 years. And how do you survive? You bring in efficiency. That's how you do it. Now, you may want to close some entire departments as well. That's where, you know, desperate people do desperate things. At some point, we're at a level of desperation in this country. We all all know we can't have $1 trillion deficits. You know, we're the fourth most indebted nation in the world. God we trust, all others bring data. The only countries more indebted than us are Japan, Greece, and Italy. We're number 4 at 100% debt to GDP. The only reason we're not Greece is a lot of our debt is owned by the public. That's why we're the Federal Reserve. It's not sustainable, we know that. So desperate people will do desperate things, bringing in Lean Six Sigma and not replacing employees. It isn't Boehner that needs to implement. Romney's a business guy. He has fixed businesses. Because Boehner is the Speaker of the House, but this is really a cabinet level thing where the President of the United States would direct his cabinet to implement Lean Six Sigma and to not hire anyone. That's an executive position of the President. Congress doesn't like, I mean, they're not going to survive a $1 trillion deficit. I really do think I can be a voice of reason and common sense, and we intend to do so. But understanding one of 435 is very different than being the top dog. So we got to use the power of persuasion, or be a nag, or be, I'm not a back of the room guy. I'm the one that will stand up and argue issues. So, as I say to Boy Scouts every day, do your best.
I have 2 questions for you. With respect to the culture change and challenge of implementing the Six Sigma, you run into situations where people get that there's going to be efficiencies and there's likely to be job reduction. So the fear of the job reduction would seem to be one of the biggest challenges in your culture change.
It is.
So how did you address that? And 2, Six Sigma crosses paths with project management, and sometimes they like to do it one way, and your PMO or your project managers might see things a little differently. So from a project management perspective, how did you make that work?
Well, the project managers were usually the team leaders, and they bring the employees in, process map, whatever it is, to be thinking out of the box. And they also knew the commissioner was, you know, they had automatic buy-in because it was top-down as far as, you know, I supported it. I had, you know, a director of Six Sigma that supported it. Therefore, all 25 of my commissioners supported it. And typically, the project managers were the team leaders. That was that one. On the other, I knew how it would take us a couple of years to get the inertia behind it. I knew it would be slow the first few years, so I did announce to people, and I lived by this for 2 years, that we are not going to eliminate jobs through Lean Six Sigma. We are going to use attrition as we bring in efficiency, and you might be reassigned from this department to that. And for 2 years, we lived that as we implemented it, because it was going slow. Partly when it caught fire in year 3, we were becoming so efficient that, you know, the first thing I did was eliminate overtime. Couldn't do it in the sheriff's department either. The sheriff was separate. But there came a point in time that I had to go back to my vision and core values and say, yeah, we're going to have to issue pink slips. But that was really only the last year, because it did take a while.
What do you think the different challenges would be in implementing Six Sigma in a company that's not struggling? Every example you've given so far today has been about situations
because it's
where
how
you're
you can just multiply your profits. I have a company in Detroit that's actually doing pretty well. They're an automation company that does all the robotic, combines computers with mechanics and hydraulics, you know, the welding machines. They wanted to take on the building next door, and I stood up and I said, no, we're going to implement Lean Six Sigma, and when you're done, you're going to free up 30% of the floor space in your current facility. The controller there and I kind of go like heads a lot. And just to show me how full of you know what I was, they brought in a guy, and they brought in Lean Six Sigma, and 12 to 18 months after that, 30% of the floor space was, and they did not have to buy the building next door. And it's now full bore in that company. And they were not a troubled business. But, you know, whether it's Moog, Carlton Technologies, someone like that, it's the only way to compete and win and survive and prosper in the world economy. Because somebody's out to eat your lunch. And we are competing against foreigners who have different rules, whether it's environmental or wages or benefits or lack thereof. And if we're in a world economy, and we are, and and you want to make sure you win, any CEO of a successful company is going to implement it so they can do better. You can never make too much money. You can never make too much money in a corporation. What's the worst you do? You return it to your shareholders, pay off all your debt. But the CEO's got to want to do better. He's got to understand what it is. Something else I'll tell you about real quick, because I didn't learn this for 3 years. And if any of you are thinking about Lean Six Sigma, there's a company called LEAP, L-E-A-P, L-E-A-P, LEAP Technologies, if you Google it. They are Six Sigma in a box. And we implemented this my last year in office. If I have a Six Sigma project, which I did for juvenile drug dependency and juvenile delinquents, and the kids that were having to lock up for substance abuse, that crossed the court system, it crossed Child Protective Services, probation. It crossed 4 or 5 departments. And I'll tell you, of all my Lean Six Sigma projects, it was the single most, because it took us a couple of years to implement it, but we went down to root cause of why these kids are falling through the cracks, to the point that we're having to incarcerate them at a cost of $2,000 per year per kid because of drug dependency and all kinds of problems. It was costing the county $18 million a year. I went into it to save money, but we changed lives. Because at the end of it, after the end of 2 years, in the area of the kids that we had in Erie County locked up 24/7, at the end of 2 years, we did not have one. We wiped it out by intervention at earlier points of these kids. We had to go into homes and teach grandmothers how to be parents because the parents weren't there. So the grandmother's raising the kids are going crazy. But again, that's something that Lean Six Sigma can do. But it was multi-department, and it's a full Lean Six Sigma program. It was 2 years, and you can implement it. If you have a single department within a single department, LEAP, I call it Six Sigma box. It's a 90-day program, and you literally open up the box, and they got magic markers in it, and they got the charts, and they got a book for each person on the team, and they got a book for the leader, and it starts on page 1. Here's the first meeting, and here's what you say. And it takes 2 minutes to say this, and then you flip the page and you do that. And here's the assignments, and then you meet the next week, and here's what you do. Honest to God, I would have thought this was nuts. Six Sigma in a box, and it's in a box, and it's got a handle on it. My God, it works, and it takes the frustration out of Six Sigma. It can be the shortest project, 6 months, Six Sigma. That's the shortest project. But if you pretty much already know what your problems are, you're trying to do a Six Sigma project on hiring people in the county. When we started that project, it took 6 months to hire somebody. And when we process mapped it, there was 280 steps in hiring an employee. It was bizarre. We knew where we wanted to go. That would have been a great Six Sigma box for me. We didn't do it that way. We did the full-blown thing. We cut 280 steps down to 47 steps to 290. That's the way it went. But that would have been one you bring Lean Six Sigma in a box called LEAP. It's not the same level of training that you do for a black belt. And there is some training, and they could send somebody in to do something. But it would have been more instant successes. And your first projects are all single department projects anyway. You want to start early, get wins, whether it's a problem with a particular product on a line, too many failures, too many this or that. You've already got 12 ideas how you could simplify or beautify this machine or that. So if you're thinking about it, I would say to everyone, I met with the police chief in Tonawanda. He also gave me a sticker. But I met with the police chief in Tonawanda, and what he wanted to do was bring Lean Six Sigma into his police department. Now, he wanted to do it. Now, he's the police chief. He can do it. Doesn't mean the mayor wanted to do it or the town council wanted to do it. He wanted to do it so it can succeed in the police department, even if other departments aren't doing it. He had to find some money. I said to him, you are an example to go with LEAP. You don't need a master black belt, 2 black belts, 4 green belts, 10 yellow belts. Go with Lean Six Sigma in a box with LEAP technology. Find $50,000 somewhere. You bring the guys in. You can do some training. I think each box is $2,500. So you get a couple of projects. So there's $5,000 for your each one. But LEAP, L-E-A-P technologies. If you Google it, I would tell anyone that's where you want to start.
Question. How do you promote and balance creativity in such?
Say that again.
How do you promote and balance creativity and new ideas for improvement in such a strict environment?
As Lean Six Sigma, or as the county?
Well, in any organization, if you're going to have such a strict environment where you've got Sigma,
No,
you've got
okay, when you say strict is,
shadow boxing your coffee.
oh, sure, but if you don't measure it, you can't manage it, you want metrics. But that doesn't mean, one of my businesses, the one in North Tonawanda, that makes you go through many iterations, whether it's a Kaizen or something else, and you redo an area. 4 months later, you've got new ideas as to how you might do it better. So you redo it. And that beauty of Lean Six Sigma is once people are trained in efficiency, you don't need to bring in a whole big group thing again. The floor manager, the production manager, worker says, I think I can be more efficient by taking these 3 things and putting them here and there. There's the other word, just do it. If it's a just do it, it's not a full-blown project. And once you get this ingrained, there's a lot of just do it. And you don't need to brag about it. You don't need to ring the bell about it. But at that business, I may only stop in there every few months, but it never looks the same. It's not stagnant. You don't do it and then you're done. The philosophy of how do we get that, like I do when I put profit sharing into the company, 0 profit with 0 sharing. But if they see there's something in it for them too, money does motivate. You like attaboys, but you want some money. If employees know they're part of the success, they're going to want it. And anyone who would say municipal union workers aren't there, that's wrong. I will tell you right now, some of the best workers I've ever worked with are municipal union workers. Highway department, some of the social service workers are the most dedicated, caring people you will ever see in your entire life. For the money, they're not. But you need to give them some process to operate. And once they see it, and they were, again, the county 98% union. I had some of the most energized. A waiting list of municipal union workers who wanted to be yellow belts and black belts. A waiting list. I used to say they're underpaid and over-benefit. So when I would rail on about the unions, it was the union leadership I was railing on, not the workers. And all I was saying was you get too much time off, 20 weeks a year. It really is. And that's what it was. And lifetime health care. It's too much. So I give you more money, but you got to go to work like the rest of us. But that's county government. How's our timing doing?
Yeah, 10 minutes.
Okay, so what other questions are there?
Of the projects that you did with the county, the one you mentioned before, I've heard of other places doing that. Chicago recently did a nice project like that. And you mentioned a couple of key words, a couple of key phrases about going all the way to the root cause and how it was a long time and you took your time to get there. Of the things that you did do there, though, what would be your least favorite ones? And what was like the ones that were the most challenging that maybe didn't get you quite as far as you would have liked?
Well, I'll give you another simple one was just to show you how we took it. In probation, we were always working a lot of overtime. They were always complaining they needed more probation officers. But when push came to shove, I don't know, a third or more of the folks that they had to come in for their monthly sit-downs to prove that they were still holding a job, they were still here, they were sober. They were not a threat. They were not violent kind of folks. They may have been DWI or something like that. We put kiosks at the DMVs. We put out either 4 or 6 kiosks, which were thumbprint or palm print. And we did it in an unobtrusive way so somebody wouldn't say, that guy's on probation. We put him in a place, the guy could come in, do his thumbprint or his palm print, would validate it's Joe, and then he'd check the box. Obviously, he's here, or he wouldn't have been there. He's still employed, he's sober, boom, 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 he's gone. He doesn't have to go see a person. Maybe he goes once every 6 months to see the probation officer. But the other 4 times were a waste anyway. So that was a very simple project. We had to buy the kiosks. We had to put money into that. The toughest one I did, and it wasn't done when I left, and I don't know where it stands now. We call it one and done. One and done was thinking out of the box. If you come in and you're a safety net person, you probably qualify for as many as 8 government programs. Food stamps, HEAP, welfare, TANF, temporary assistance. There's a multitude of things, Medicaid, and so forth. Well, each one was a separate department. And you would literally, you could spend 2 days trying to apply. You go in and you meet here, and you give them all your data, and they put it in the computer, and you take your documents, and you put them in a folder, and they start a file, and then they say, go down the hall, now you can apply for it. And you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. We said, how about one and done? You walk in, you sit down in front of one person. What we hired, and it cost us about $2 million for IBM to develop a computer algorithm, because all of the qualifications are different. You know, depending on the number of kids, your income, from daycare, you might, but different poverty levels apply, different family income levels, and so forth. So you put it all out. You bring in your birth certificate, your proof of employment, or your tax returns, and where you live, and so forth and so on. It gets all put into the computer, and all the documents are scanned in, at which point there's no paper. There were something like 60 county workers who did nothing but go through the building with carts of paper, up and down floors. And when they were all done with the process, then they went in a room and scanned them into a computer. Well, scan them in at the front end. The other problem we had in the county was they would start a folder, and they'd get 80% of the way through, and usually it was a woman. The woman would say, well, I don't have the birth certificates or the proof of birth. Well, you're going to have to come back then. So then that folder would go off to the corner, waiting for her to come back in. But because there was a folder, the clock started, and the state said you got X days to process all your applications. And we were getting hammered by the state because we were passing the deadlines, the 60-day deadline. It wasn't our fault. The woman wasn't bringing the paper back in. So we set up a rule. We don't start until you've got all your paper. You want public assistance? Personal accountability. Remember my 6 core values. Personal accountability and responsibility. Bring in your documents. Don't have your documents? I'm sorry, I'm not starting a folder on it. Go home, get your documents, come back, and then we'll do it. So the clock's not ticking. But we scan them all in at once. And then the IBM computer algorithm takes that data and comes right out. You qualify for food stamps for this amount. You qualify for daycare assistance. You qualify for this. You qualify for that. One and done. It's going to cut almost 500 employees out. And improve service. Now these poor people coming in aren't spending 3 days traipsing all over the county building and schlocking stuff all over the place. One and done. We were halfway into that project when I got unelected. And I don't know where it is now. My guess is it probably got put in the circular file. But then again, we'd already spent the money with IBM. It was already going down the road and had been implemented a couple. I think there's a chance that one was too far along for Mr. Kolenkart. But that one was, I won't use the word frustrating, but difficult. I mean, that took us 4 years, 3+ years to get to the point we would tackle something that complex that crossed so many departments, that had so many rules. And we were the first county in the country to go after these algorithms, and IBM, who we hired to do it, you know, they were pretty frustrated by all the nuances, what goes into what benefit program you qualify for. Some of them are federal, some of them are state, some of them are local. Some of them are a little of this and a little of that, and you lose welfare at the federal level, and you come in at the state level, at the county level. Yeah, it was not easy, but that was tough.
Just like you started in Westinghouse in '76, I started across the street in Councilman in '76. We were neighbors, right. And I taught there at TQM course way back. Yeah. And it was a great program. And
so you're an old guy like me.
Well, yeah, I'm getting there. And I really see the value in that, and it worked to some extent at Cal Sped, and it sounds like it worked in your companies as well. But I'd still like to hear a little bit more about how it's going to work in Congress. I think about all the influence of lobbyists, special interests. It's not the same as being an executive over a company or a county.
You know, we're desperate.
So how does it work with all the lobbyists and all that influence bubbling up and pushing things this way and that way?
I don't know. What I'll tell you is we're desperate enough in this country, there's a fighting chance. And here's what I would say to other members of Congress. If we do what needs to be done to fix this country and put it on a growth to prosperity where we reclaim our past opportunity, we're very likely to all be unelected. challenge other people, and I will, to do what's right even if you get unelected. And 20 years from now, they look back at that Congress, God, you really fixed it. But it's you know, that's the problem. Many of them do need the job. Best job you'll ever have.
Maybe you should tell their pay to incentive, you know, if you can do this, then this is, I mean, obviously it's hard to ask.
You're a private sector, you're a dreamer. No, what you do is you cajole, you embarrass, you challenge. I don't know. Again, it's like I say to the Cub Scouts. The Cub Scout motto is do your best. All you can do is do your best. And it's not going to be easy, but I do think this country's at a tipping point, and we all know it's got to change. And everything we do is going to impact everybody. Everybody. Everybody's impacted by everything, whether it's a flatter tax, or my mom with her Social Security and her Medicare, or highways being fixed. I mean, I would suggest we should block free up Medicaid. Let, 10th Amendment. Smaller government, let the states decide. When I was county executive, Town of Clarence came and he said, we'd like Beaman Creek Park. We want that county park. We want it to become the Town of Clarence Park. We want you to sign off on giving us that park. I thought for, 10 seconds, I said, fine, you can have it. He said, here's the only caveat. It's got to be open to all county residents. It is now as a county park, and granted, probably no one outside of Clarence that uses it. But with that caveat, you can have the park. Now, how could I make the decision that quick? Because one of my 6 core values is local decision making. I will defer to a town supervisor or a village or city mayor to do best by their residents better than I could ever do. So 10th Amendment says it should be at the state's level. The federal government has usurped all this power over the last 200 years. If you go back to the Constitution, it's with the exception of a few things, it's the states that should be doing things. Well, block grant Medicaid, block grant food stamps, make it part of the state's responsibility. If they want to give out a lot, they got to tax their residents. And if they're in Alabama or Arkansas and they don't want to do it, they don't have to have the same tax. Personal accountability, personal responsibility, local decision. It works every time. That's how we can get there. All right, one more question.
Well, let's see, how do I phrase this? Did you see a lot of unfunded mandates shoved down on you from the federal and the state levels? And kind of the corollary question, if you get to the federal level, do you think you can deconstruct the federal programs enough to push them down to a manageable level?
You can't believe 85% of the county budget is mandated. And mandating it, the best example is Medicaid. Medicaid is 110% of the Erie County property. 110%, it's $220 million a year is our share of Medicaid at the county level, and our property tax was $210 million. So all we were living on, and all we do live on in Erie County, is sales tax. 110% of our property tax goes to Medicaid. Medicaid is 100% Albany program. They tell us what we need to do. I was mounting number one, I was going to sue the governor, I was going to sue Albany, claiming that it was unconstitutional to mandate to us and then not pay us and treat Erie County, the third poorest city in the United States, the same as Westchester, because it's one size fits all. And I was saying the counties should have the right as to what Medicaid programs they deliver beyond the federal minimum. New York State takes them all on. That's why we spend 3 times what California or Texas spends on Medicaid per person. 3 times. We have 19 million people and we spend $60 billion in New York. Texas and California combined have 60 million people and they spend the same $60 billion. They spend $1,000 a person, we spend $3. So those are mandates, but all manner and sort of things we do on welfare, certainly pensions are mandated, pensions are controlled out of Albany. Our union contracts are subject to the Taylor law, which means you really can't negotiate. I mean, the whole problem in this state is not at the county, city, town, or village level. It's all an Albany problem. So yeah, I think at the federal level, if you honor the 10th Amendment and push it back to the state, say, okay, you got 19 million people, here's how much I'll give you for our federal Medicaid program. Anything else you want to do, but you're going to have to tax your residents. Yeah, unfunded mandates are at the root cause of all of our school tax problems, the Taylor law, all the other things, Medicaid being the biggest driving force across the county. And the worst of the worst is Erie County because we're home to the third worst. But we've got to understand change is happening. It's not going to be easy. And you can't be afraid of being unelected. Or you won't do the the right thing. All right, well, this was fun.
Thank you
This
very
was
much.
fun. Thank you so much. But I got the 60+ award tonight, or today, for protecting the rights of seniors. Security measures. So, yeah.
Pardon? Send it to your phone. Yeah. Text. No, she told me to ask hard questions. I didn't think it was quick.